Now, Supabase is amazingly powerful, but unfortunately, a lot of people merely scrape the surface using just the basic features and not really taking full advantage of everything that Supabase has to offer. And so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you some amazingly powerful techniques that you can put to use right away and make your apps a lot more powerful and a lot more user friendly. And I'm 100% sure that by the end of the video, you're going to be implementing, if not a couple, but all of the techniques that I'm going to be discussing today. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I discuss on this channel, you can learn more, view, and or clone these apps via our amazing Patreon community. And if you're still not a member of our amazing Patreon community, then you can learn more and hopefully become a member via the link in the description below the video. Now, the first thing that I want to show you is a chat app that we built in one of the previous videos, but unfortunately it lacked a couple of important features. So here I am logged in as two different users into this chat app. And if we jump here, we can click on one of the conversations, and here we have a conversation that this user is having with Mike. And here I'm logged in as Mike. So if you come over here, you can see that I'm logged in as Mike here. And I'm having a conversation with Rob, who is logged in here. So I can come here and I can continue this conversation. Now, in the previous chat demo, one of the problems that we had is when we send a message to the other user, it was not immediately visible. And so what the user had to do was they had to leave, and they had to come back, and that would do a refresh, and they would see the last messages. Well, that is no longer the case, because right now these messages are delivered in real time. So check this out. So here I am having a conversation with Rob. So we're discussing some of the things that we can do tonight. So Rob is like, maybe, I'll watch the game, and that's a good idea. And then I say, well, how about we meet somewhere and watch it together? Okay. So I'm about to send a message to Rob, who is logged in here. And once I do that, you will be able to see the message here automatically. Okay, so we don't need to reload the app. We don't need to do anything. It's automatically. And plus, we get a push notification as well, which was a feature in the previous app version. Okay, so before you had to go back, you had to reload it. It wasn't instant. It wasn't real time, which is how it should be behaving if you're building a real chat app, because pretty much all the chat apps, they are real time, right? They're multi-user and they're real time. So that message is being delivered and they see the message along with the push notification. Okay, so I can reply to Mike, right? So this is Mike right here, and this is Rob. So I can reply back to Mike and I can say, sure, that sounds awesome. How about at 7 p.m.? Okay, so I'm ready to send the message. I hit send, and guess what? We see the message right away. We did not need to refresh, and we also see the notification as well here. Okay, so notification is something that we covered in the last video, but this was not something that was working before. Now, as you can see, it's all automatic. It works amazingly. So let me go ahead and send another message. That sounds, 7 p.m. sounds perfect. See you then. Okay, so something like this, hit send, and there it is. 7 p.m. sounds perfect. See you then. Okay, so now we've implemented the feature that needed to be there in the first place. This is an amazing feature, and now our app is almost complete. Okay, so how exactly is this done? Well, if we jump back into Flutterflow, I can show you what exactly is happening. And in order to do this, we are using Supabase, but we are also using Supabase's real-time functionality. And so if you jump here into this custom code, we have a couple of custom actions here, okay? And these are special actions because they're not going to be called by the user, right? So like custom actions are actions that are executed by the user typically. But in this case, these are actions that do something special and are loaded by our app. Okay, so we have this custom action here, subscribe to changes. And here in this custom file, this main.dart, we are loading it, right, as part of this final action. And this is the same way that we were loading this initialized messaging that I covered in the previous video. And if you haven't seen that video, you're going to be seeing it in the corner right there. This new custom action called subscribe to changes, what it's doing is it's using Supabase's real-time functionality to get real-time data from a specific table. Okay, so as soon as there's a record in that table, we know about it, right? This function, this custom action knows about it. Okay, so you need a little bit of code here, but this is very, very simple. Okay, so what we have here is we are using this Flutterflow's Supabase client called Supaflow. Okay, this is their own client, and when we use it, we do not need to initialize our own Supabase client from scratch because we already have Supabase configured and set to go and up and running with Flutterflow, right? So we can leverage their Supabase client called Supaflow, okay? And here we are listening on this Z chat messages table, right? And so if we jump into Supabase, we have this table here, and this is a table that stores individual messages, storing the chat ID, the user ID, and the message itself. Okay, so this is a standard table that you would create if you're building a chat app, right? To store messages, you know, having to do with a specific chat and from a specific user. An important thing here is that you need to make sure you enable real time, right? So I have it here, and this would disable it. But if you start with a basic table, chances are it's not going to be enabled by default. Okay, this is something that you have to do on a table by table basis, right? So if I go into one of these other tables, it's not going to be enabled, right? So it says here real time off. So if you click here, you can enable it, right? And this is nice because we don't really need a real time enabled on all the tables, right? We want it to be enabled on the specific tables that we actually care about, right? That we actually want to get real-time notification. And this first tip here has to do with Supabase real-time. And this is something that many of you have been asking me about for quite some time. And I'm happy to say that I finally got around to kind of showing you how this works. And so if we jump back into the app, we're basically listening on this table. And here we have a stream that's listening. And here what we are doing is we're getting all the fields, right? So we get an event. Event is essentially a record, right? So in this case, it's a message. So if I enter a message, we get an event. If the other user enters a message, we get an event. So we get all the messages and we create something called a message object. So what exactly is a message object? Well, that is nothing more than a custom data type, right? So if you come over here, we have a message type and it has 4 fields, and these are the fields that we care about: message ID, chat ID, and user ID, and message. And these are the 4 fields that you see in this table, right? So if you ignore these 2, these are the fields here. Well, also the ID, right? So everything except the created at. This, and this. And we're basically, you know, storing this custom data type because the main thing that you guys need to understand here is we cannot display the Supabase data, right? So we cannot come back here and we cannot display, you know, we cannot do a standard query. We need to display data that we have control over, right? Data that we're working with. And that is why what I did was I created a message list, which is an app state variable that we are kind of working with, manipulating in this, you know, custom action here. So what's happening here is that instead of querying the data directly, right, like we always do from the database, we are using a function that reads the data from the table and updates our app state as the data is coming in with our real-time functionality, right? So all of this is real-time, right? This stream here, we are creating a real-time stream, and this way we are getting the data in real time and we are updating app state. And so this is exactly what it's doing. It's basically listening on our real-time events, and anytime there's a new record in this table, it saves it as that object, as that data type that we've defined here, right? This message type, and then it adds it to this message list. And now all we need to do is display the message list, which is exactly what we're doing. Now here I have a filter, because I don't want to display all the messages. I want to display just for that specific chat ID, right? Remember, a conversation is essentially a chat. And so here, I don't want to display all the messages and all the conversations. I want to filter the messages by a special chat ID. If I was doing it here, then I can do a filter, right? So remember, if I was doing it the standard way, I can add a filter. But because we're not doing it, we're not getting the data like straight from the database, we need to, have our own filter. But this works really, really nicely. And as a result, all of this stuff is not coming directly from the database. It's coming from the real-time functionality. These are essentially real-time events. And so I can type something there. Hey, I had a question or something like that. I had a question, send it. And now it gets it right away. Okay. This would not happen if you were doing a standard Supabase backend query. Okay. So once we have this data, we have the standard flow. We're basically displaying the messages. We can filter by chat ID. We can display the individual messages. The key here is this thing here. And this is something that you can build yourself. You can use ChatGPT to write this for you using real-time functionality. You can learn more about it. Or if you're a member of our amazing Patreon community, you're going to have access to this entire app. And you're going to have access to all of this. So that way you can start messing with it and kind of working with it right away. Okay, so that's my first tip for you, is using Supabase real-time functionality so that you can display data as it happens, right? As the data is sent, as the messages are sent, as Supabase receives it, you can display it immediately. And this is, obviously a must, right? If you're building any kind of a serious app, you don't want the user to sit there and wonder whether the other person sent them a message or not, right? You want those messages to be delivered immediately, and this does exactly that. Now, the next tip that I want to show you is a tip that's going to save you a lot of hassle and a lot of time and a lot of pain. And this has to do with this table here. So in this table, Z Chats, we are storing chat information, right? So if you're going to be building an app, like a chat app or a similar app, where you need to store information on various users that, are part of something, right? So in this case, this is a chat, but it could be pretty much anything. You're going to be dealing with this exact problem. And so the tip that I'm going to show you is going to make your life 100 times easier. Okay, so here we have this chats table, and a record is created anytime we start a new chat, right? So if we start a new chat with another user, if we add more users to the chat, if we have a multi-user chat, anytime we have a different chat, we're going to have a new record created here, right? And so what exactly are we storing? Well, I'm storing the user 1 ID, the user 2 ID, because right now we're only supporting 2 users per chat. But the other thing that I'm doing here is I am storing users here, right? And this is very, very important, because this allows me in my app to quickly filter the chats where I am a member. Okay, this is very, very useful, makes it a lot easier. And so as you can see, we have various chats, and you can ignore this one. This is just a test, but this is a real chat here, right? So we have Mike 2000 and Rob 2000, and these are usernames. Okay, these are usernames who are chatting. And in our app, what happens here? So if we go into chats, and we're displaying the chats, we are displaying the records from Z Chats, but we have a very, very important filter. And this is where we are asking Supabase to only give us the records where we are the actual participant, right? Because we don't want to see all the chats. That's going to be a major security issue, right? It's going to be a privacy issue. And so what we're doing here is we're looking at this users field here. That's an array of different nicknames for the chats, and I'm saying that the list contains a username that is us, basically our username, and these usernames are stored in another table. And so the first thing that we're doing is we're basically looking up in that table and finding out the username, because with Supabase you are limited the kind of information that you can store about the authenticated user. So If I'm logged in, I know like I can only, retrieve the user ID pretty much, right? If I want to store other other pieces of information, such as a profile picture, a username, birth date, etc., that needs to be another table that you map to the other to the main users table. So that is exactly what we did. And so we have this other table here called z user info. Okay, and this is our other table. And in this table, we are storing username and another field that I'm going to explain a little bit later. But it links back to this user ID, right? So we have these usernames, and this is great because in my app, I can display a username, right? I don't, it's going to be pretty silly to display this user ID. It's pretty much useless, but the username is very useful for displaying in various places. And so if we go to our chats table, we have this users that is essentially an array of texts. And these are usernames. And so what I can do is in my app, because I have this data, I can simply filter and see if I am, part of that array. Basically, if I'm logged in as Rob, then I'm basically checking, is Rob one of these users? No, yes. Or if I'm logged in as Mike, I can check if Mike is one of these users, okay? And so far, everything that I talked about makes sense. But the issue comes up is, let's say I started chat, right? When I started chat, I'm going to put myself first, and then I'm going to put the other user second, right? If Rob starts a chat, well, guess what? The logic is the same. Now, Rob is going to put themselves first and Mike second. And what this means is we're going to have another record. Basically, we're going to have two records for the same chat. And that is a big problem because we only have one chat between Mike and Rob. And so there's no reason to have two records, right? That's just going to mess things up. And you're basically going to be seeing two chats, right? So if you come back here, I see one chat, but if we create two records, which is something that would happen if you do not take this special precaution, you're basically going to be seeing duplicated chats. And this is a big issue. And so ideally, what you want to happen is you only want to be able to create one of these records per chat. So regardless if Mike is creating this record, basically Mike is logged in, or if Rob is logged in. And so regardless of who is logged in, you want these records to be equal, unique. And one way to do it is by alphabetical order, right? So if Rob is logged in and he's chatting with Mike, Mike is always going to come first because M comes before R, right? And the same situation if James is logged in, right? James is going to come first because J comes before M and J comes before R, okay? And so we always want these records here to be created in alphabetical order, because if they are created in alphabetical order, then we can see, oh, we already have that record. And so that means it's not going to get created, right? Because we have something called a unique constraint, right? So if you come over here to our table definition, we have a unique constraint here. We have this unique user pair that looks at this and says, oh, James and Mike is already there. So you can create another one, right? And so the only thing that's left to do is to make sure that, that row over there, that array is always alphabetically ordered. And how is that done? Well, this is my second tip for you, is that you can create a special Supabase function, not an edge function. Edge functions are different. This is a Supabase function that reorders the fields in alphabetical order. So let me show you exactly how this works. So if you jump into our database and if we come into functions, I have a special function here called enforce column order, right? So if you click here, you can edit this function. And this is this function. I actually used ChatGPT to generate this function for me. Or you can also use, you can come in here and you can use Supabase AI to do it as well. It works just as well. And so if you come back here and you take a look at this function, what this function is doing is it's looking at the two fields and it's basically asking itself, is the first field greater than the second field? And this comparison is the alphabetical order comparison. Basically, does it come after, alphabetically speaking? If it does, it basically swaps the values. It swaps the values, so that way it's always in alphabetical order. Now, it's not enough to create this function, right? The next thing that you need to do is you need to create a trigger, right? Triggers are the key, right? A trigger is something that gets executed or triggered when something happens to your database, right? So if we come into triggers here, we have this enforce order before insert or update trigger. And this is where you connect your function to a specific table. So in this case, we have it connected to this Z chat, and we're using this function that we've defined just a couple of moments ago. And we are making sure that it's set on insert or update, right? Because you can create a new record. And you can also update a record by changing the values, right? And so regardless whether you're creating a new record or you're updating a record, you're inadvertently, you may have swapped the values. So they're no longer in alphabetical order. This trigger, with this function will fix that issue, right? So this will always work, right? And so if you come over here, you can edit this trigger and you can basically rename it, right? Because when you are creating a trigger, when you come here, you basically give it a name and you're saying, well, I want this trigger to be on Z chats, and I want to make sure that it gets executed or triggered on any of these events, insert or update. We don't really care for delete, right? When a chat is deleted, we don't really care. There's nothing that we need to do. But when a new chat is created or a chat is updated, we want this trigger to be executed. And we want to make sure it's before the event, right? Trigger fires before the operation is attempted so that we can double check if they're in complete order, and we may want to swap them if necessary. We want to make sure it's before, and that's pretty much it. And here you can choose a function, and in our case, this is this function here. You select the function here and you say confirm, okay, because we already have this trigger. We don't need to do it again, but this is exactly how you would do it. And this essentially gives you the power to always have consistency in your database. And obviously, this is a specific example for a very, very specific use case. But not only this is something that you're going to be using, you may also use this specific use case in all kinds of scenarios. But I want you guys to be aware of triggers, because triggers can do amazing things that will, save your life, if you will, make your life a lot easier and save you a lot of heartache and debugging and endless sleepless nights and all of that. Because the fact of the matter is, when you're creating a new chat here, you want to make sure they stay consistent. You don't want to make sure that you have various permutations and combinations of these chats depending on who created that chat, right? Because I don't want to worry about this logic in my app. I just want to create the chat. I want to put myself first, and I want the system to reorder them alphabetically if necessary, right? If necessary. If, my username is is after the other username, right? So let's say my username starts with Z and I'm chatting with somebody called Alex. Well, in that case, my username is going to come after Alex, and then Alex starts a chat. Alex is going to come first. So in my case, I want to make sure that it reorders, right? So that, I don't put my username first, Alex come first. And then when Alex starts a chat on their end, in their app, we want to make sure that Alex comes first. And chances are, Alex is going to come first because it starts with an A. And Supabase is going to say, well, we already have that chat, so it's not going to create a new chat anymore. And that is exactly what you want. So definitely take a look at Supabase functions, not edge functions, just regular Supabase functions and triggers. They're going to come in handy in so many different situations and scenarios. Now, the next tip that I want to share with you guys has to do with edge functions. Now, Supabase edge functions are extremely, extremely powerful. You can get them to do pretty much anything that you want, and they're not really limitless. You can really enhance your app in so many amazing ways, in ways that you probably thought that you may need a third-party tool to achieve the same thing. And fortunately, you can achieve a lot of the things that you may have been wondering about with Supabase edge functions. So let me show you a quick demo. So we have this chat app here, and what we can do is we can start a new chat. And we can start a new chat with another user, or we can start it with a bot. So here I have an image bot. So I can click here, and that's going to open up a new chat screen with this bot. Now, this bot is special, and this bot does one thing, and one thing really well. So if you give it an image, it will do some processing to this image. Okay, so as an example, Let's say we go out and we find an image. So here I have a bunch of images. So let's say we take this image of this house. All I need to do is right click, copy image address, come back here, and we have this image address in the clipboard. So all I need to do is click here, and that creates a message with this image URL. So if I hit send, that will show the image, but it will also do something else. So here we see a new image, we see a response, and in this case, I just wanted to have a little bit of fun. So what we're doing is we are inverting the colors. Okay, so if it's light white, it basically becomes, black. If it's, this color, if it's blue, it becomes red. It basically inverts the colors. So let me show you another example. So let's say we take this image here of this beautiful view here, copy image address, we come back here. And so I'm going to delete this old image here, okay, so that we can try this brand new image, delete that there. And I'm going to paste this new image, okay? And then I hit send. This image is displayed here, and we have a new image being worked on, right? So if you recall, this was like an image or some kind of like a ocean view. We had like an island there, right? This is this image here. And here you can see it being kind of manipulated, right? We changed a couple of colors. I just wanted to have a little bit of fun. And this is done with edge function. Now, there's one more thing that's happening here is that we are using that real-time functionality that we had for regular text messages. And that is why you're seeing this appear like immediately, right? You don't need to refresh or anything like that. We're still using this real-time functionality, but the whole image processing is done by an edge function. So let me show you exactly how this works. So if we jump back to our Supabase database, the first thing that we're doing is we are using a webhook to listen for different events, right? So if you come to this webhook, we have here a webhook called resize image hook. And this is listening on this chat messages table. Okay, so this is that other table that has all the messages. And so what we're doing is we're listening for insert events, right? So if you come over here, you can edit this hook and you can say, well, we only care about insert events. Okay, and so what this is going to do is it's going to notify something, right? So anytime we have an insert on this table, it's going to notify something. Who is it going to notify, or what is it going to notify? Well, if you scroll down, you have a type of webhook, right? We can send an HTTP request, or we can use a Supabase edge function. And here I have my edge function. I actually have two edge functions here, but this is the one I'm using. And that's all you need to do. You can update this webhook. You can create a new one. Typically, you're going to be creating a new one and using this function. And so if you go into edge functions, you can see our edge functions. In this case, I have just two edge functions. And this is the edge function that actually works with the image, right? So if you click here, you can see some more information about this edge function. But the actual edge function is right here. And I actually use ChatGPT to build it out for me. But essentially, what it's doing is it's listening for the URL in the message, right? So if you come back over here to our messages, if we come back to our Supabase database here, and we come back here to our Z-chat messages, you can see that we're going to have just regular chat messages, but we're also going to have these image URLs here, right? And so what the function is doing is it's listening for these specific messages. Now, what the Supabase edge function is doing is, first, it needs to download the image so that it can process it and save it so that it's going to be visible in Flutterflow chat window. And so the first thing that it's doing is it's fetching the image, right? So, we pasted that URL, it fetches the image. The next thing that it's doing is it's using this invert function to invert the colors, right? You can do all kinds of things. You can resize the image. You can change the pixels. You can do anything that you want. I just wanted to show you a quick example, right? So I'm using this invert function. And after we have our modified image, what we're doing here is we're encoding it as JPEG, and then we're uploading it into our Supabase storage, right? We're uploading it into a specific bucket. So if we jump into our Supabase storage, I have here a bucket, and you're going to be seeing processed images, right? So this is the first image that we processed of this house here, this kind of we inverted the colors. So the sky was, a light color. Now it's a relatively dark color. And this is the second image, right? So this was ocean, right? Which was a light color. Now this is a darker color. So all the dark colors became light and the light colors became dark. And once we have this image, it goes ahead and gets the publicly available URL, right? So this is this function here. So here I can click on get URL, and that's going to copy it to clipboard. This is a publicly available URL that everybody can access. And this is exactly what it's doing. It gets this public URL, and then it creates a new record in that table. And because we have a new record in the table, it automatically is displayed here in this kind of chat messages screen, or this screen right here. And remember, we're still, leveraging this real-time functionality. And that is why we are seeing the images pop up as they're ready, right? As the record is created, regardless of whether this is a user that's typing or a bot that is doing it, the results are immediately visible, right? Because this screen is immediately rebuilt as the data is coming in, right? So I can send another image here. And so here's the image we sent. And this is the response that we got immediately after it finished processing and it created a new record in the table, okay? And so all of this is thanks to this Supabase Edge function. And this is a function that I created with the help of ChatGPT. So if you're a member of our amazing Patreon community, I'm going to be making available my ChatGPT conversation as well. And that way you can see exactly how I was creating my prompts with ChatGPT so that it can create this amazing function for me and save me a lot of time in the process. And so Supabase Edge functions can do pretty much everything. And this is not an exaggeration. They really can do everything that you may need in your app. And we're talking about background tasks. We're talking about tasks that you really don't want to do inside of a Flutterflow, right? So like resizing images, processing text, processing images, processing files, processing data, you name it. Supabase Edge functions are perfect for these specific use cases. Now, I demonstrated some amazing Supabase tips and tricks here, but this is really just scraping the top of the surface. Supabase is an amazing piece of technology. It offers you a lot of amazing components that you can use in your apps. And so if you guys want to learn more about Supabase, definitely check out my training called Mastering Supabase. The training is perfect for beginners, intermediate, or even people with some level of experience under their belt. It's an amazing training that kind of walks you through with understanding all the components, all the moving pieces that is essentially Supabase. But if you guys really want to master the specific techniques that I covered here, then you guys definitely need to join our amazing Patreon community, because when you do, you're going to get access to this app. I'm also going to make available my ChatGPT conversation as well, so that you can see exactly like how I got it to build all this stuff out for me. Because many of you might be thinking to yourselves, hey, James, this is a no-code channel, but you've been showing us a lot of code. Well, that's not exactly true, because I've had ChatGPT write and generate this code for me. So there's really not a lot of coding that I did in this demo. And you're going to learn exactly kind of what went through my mind, my thought process, everything, from the beginning to end. In that ChatGPT conversation, you're going to get access to it as a valued member of our Patreon community. But that's not all, you're going to get access to a ton of other things, including pretty much all the apps that I covered on the channel. So if there's an app that you saw and you were wondering how I did something, or you're stuck somewhere, you've been following on the video and you're not sure something is not working, then you're going to get access to that app as well. You can ask questions in that post, in that specific Patreon post, and people are going to help you out. We have an amazing community of just incredible people there that are just eager to learn no code, eager to kind of build apps and really take their no code knowledge to the next level. And so if that's you, you definitely need to join up and become a member. And that's also a great way to support this channel and support my work. Really kind of motivates me to record and kind of put out more of these tutorial videos if they help you guys out to kind of achieve different things. And it's really a passion of mine to kind of teach you guys the various things that you can get done, think outside of the box. And so if all of that sounds like something that you're going to gain value from, then definitely go ahead and check out our amazing Patreon community and become a member. You're going to get a ton of value in the process, and it's definitely going to improve your no-code game.